lot of young people come to me and ask, so did you always know what you wanted to do? Because it feels like, you have to just understand and know who you're going to be at such an early age. There's all this pressure to do it. But I had this amazing uncle who gave me some really great advice when I was young. And he said, it's really about striking things off your list. So make a huge list of all the things that you'd love to try, and then try them and strike them off. And I have actually, it's ridiculous. It would take me like half an hour to talk about all the different things I've tried. A lot of different things. But I became an entrepreneur in sort of an accidental, kind of interesting way. I thought I was going to be an academic. I applied to do my PhD in the States, and I wasn't sure I wanted to go into the tunnel for 5 years and focus in one area, because I was interested in so many things. So I went over to Europe to find myself, and I was in Paris sitting reading a newspaper, and the front page was, the wall had just fallen down. And it was the most amazing time, and some of you might not even know that there was a wall up at some point, but you're so young. But there was this wall, and divided east and west. Anyway, the wall fell down, and I went, oh my God, the world is changing, and I got on a train, and I went to Eastern Europe, and I ended up staying in Prague for 4 years. It completely changed my life. So I got there, and every conversation was, now that I'm free, I'm going to do this. Now that I'm free, I'm going to do this. And I went, oh my God, I'm free too. What am I going to do? And it was a crazy situation, because of course you grow up in Canada and you think, you're free, you could do anything. But I didn't really feel free, like totally free like everyone in the Czech Republic was. They were just creating new things, redesigning themselves overnight. So I thought, well, look around. Everyone here needs to learn English. So I started an English language school. And I ended up meeting some really interesting people, and I was coaching all the new government on their English, and I started the school and hired these teachers, and it started to take off, and I'm like, oh my God, I can do anything. This is cool. What else should I do next? So I got this thing going, and there were no nice clothes. And now I'd never worked in retail. I had no idea about any of this stuff. But I had this brand that I loved called Ashoka, and I knew they were in India somewhere. And there were all these beautiful hand-printed textiles with wood-carved blocks, a really old sort of traditional technology from India. And so I borrowed some money and strapped $7,000 of cash around my waist and went off to India to find Ashoka. Now, okay, this is a little bit before the web, so normally now you would actually find out where they are before you just go to India. But no, I landed in Delhi, and I was looking for this place and asking anyone, do you know where Ashoka is? And eventually I got to Jaipur and found this place. And what I really wanted to do was buy a ton of these beautiful scarves and go and sell them on the Charles Bridge in Prague and see if people were interested in it, because I thought it would be kind of cool to maybe have a store at some point. So I got there, and I said I wanted to buy this many scarves, and they said, oh, well, we don't sell scarves individually. And I said, what do you mean? Well, only if you're going to open a store and have our brand in the city, can you get these scarves? And I said, oh, yeah, I'm going to have a store. And they said, okay, when are you opening it? I said, oh, in the summer. Oh, well, you have to order now for your store. And I went, oh my God, okay. So I said, yeah, that's no problem. And so they sat me in a room, and they gave me swatches. So there's like a huge pile like this of all these individual patterns that were the patterns of the season, like just a square. And then they gave me this photocopied piece of paper with drawings of different kinds of shirts, short sleeve, long sleeve, skirts, dresses. And I had to think, okay, that picture that's drawn there with that color. And so in 3 hours, I ordered an entire store worth of clothing. I had no idea what I was doing. I had never done anything like this before, but I wanted the scarves, so I had to do it. So I went through this process. I was super pumped. I got it done, put it down. They came in the room, and they said, oh, you didn't do the size breakdown. I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea how to do that. What size 4, size 6, size 12? Anyway, so I faked it, got it done. Ended up opening the store, got a loan in the Czech Republic for 17% interest, which had to be paid back in 1 year. Those were the great deals at the time. And I sold 80% of the stock that I ordered at full price, which was like beginner's luck, so unbelievable. So then I was like, I can do anything. This is awesome. So I got all of my friends to start businesses over there, and I was this massive catalyst for entrepreneurship in Prague. And then one day I was at a party at the Canadian ambassador's residence in Prague, and someone came up to me, a Czech came up to me and said, why are you doing all of this here instead of in your own country? And I thought, how could you do this in Canada? How could you get a whole bunch of people together and get them to believe anything was possible, and they could go start a business, and they could do anything. And so I thought about it a lot, and I came back to Canada, and I thought, if I'm going to start to do something like this, it has to start with young people. There's less layers of the onion to peel. They're more ready to believe that anything is possible. And I kept in the back of my mind thinking about this crazy thing that happened for me in Prague, which was one day there was a tank in the country, the army, and no one was free in their mind. And one day those tanks just drove away, and every single person flipped a switch that they were free, just like that. So how do you get the tanks out of people's heads was this big question for me. How do you do that? Because it happened to me. I was sold. DNA level change, completely entrepreneur for life. So I started working with the largest board of education. I went to them and said, what we really need to do is get young people involved in solving real-world problems as soon as possible. And I have a new idea for this curriculum, and what I want to do is have create this curriculum with focus on global entrepreneurship, technology, and have a whole new sort of teaching experience in the class. This is for high school students. And then have them work on an international component of a co-op. So they do a co-op here, and then they go internationally at 16 years old. So I said, and by the way, I'll cover my salary. And so the board said, go for it, figure it out. So I called, kind of to the earlier point of Zara, 1,000 companies to get 10 to say yes. It was the most painful thing I have ever done in my life. I started and I'd be like, hi, I'm from this board of education. We have this whole new program, International Co-op. It's going to be great. These 16-year-olds are going to come into your company and solve a problem for you, and then go to your international office and help them with the problem. And they're like, 16? Click. I got one of those at home. No, thank you. It was brutal, and this was in 1995. Now everyone would be like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. That makes a lot of sense. But at that time, a 16-year-old, that wasn't going to happen. But we kind of rode the wave of this sort of dot-com time, and we had really amazing stories that emerged out of this. So this program got created. It ended up being funded as a pilot by the federal government because they were really interested in international internships. And that came about because I was desperate to sort of find some extra money for this. And my uncle had always said to me, if you want money, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for money, which has served me so well. So I called the government and said, I don't want money, but I need your advice on, and they said, what? Wait a minute, what did you just say? And I said, no, I don't want money, I'm not calling for money, I just need your help. And they went, what, you really don't want money? No, no, no. And so they gave me all this great advice, but then they got engaged in the idea, and I got a phone call a couple months later, and they gave me $150,000 for this project. And I was in Ottawa a few months later after the program got kicked off at a cocktail party, and introduced myself to this woman. She goes, oh my God, this is the woman I've been telling you guys about. She pulled all these other people over. She goes, this woman, Vicki Saunders, she's the one who called me and said she didn't want money. And they're like, oh my God, that's her? She's the one who did that? God, so anyway, try it. Seriously, it works so well. If you want money, ask for advice. So this program took off. It was just amazing. We had young people who learned how to set up Lotus Notes. This was a long time ago, Lotus Notes, which you don't even hear about anymore. Set up Lotus Notes in the RBC office in Toronto, and then went to the international office in London and trained their whole staff, and it cost them $6,000. Like, unbelievable. And so one after the next, these stories came out, and now I had something to sell. And very much to Zara's line of along here, just the total power of inexperienced wisdom is what I would call it. Like, people who haven't actually done something before don't know it's impossible, and they go off and they create these amazing results. So when we had these stories, I started going out, and we ended up creating a company called Kids Energy, and hired teams of 14 to 24-year-olds to solve problems that no one else could figure out. So the Design Exchange was trying to put the Encyclopedia of Design online. It was impossible. They'd hired all these consultants to do it. Luigi Ferrara, who's now over at George Brown and runs the Institute Without Boundaries, said, here's $30,000, see if you guys can figure it out. And a 16-year-old did it in 6 weeks. So we just had story after story. And I had, when I thought about this at the very beginning, it was a consulting company, but I really wanted to create a scalable business. And I had drawn 3 circles. And one of them was, if you actually have teams of young people working on these projects and learning deeply about some of the challenges businesses are facing and coming up with cool ideas, they may actually come up with their own business ideas. And that was my second circle. And so maybe we could incubate those ideas and see how they do. And if they get ready for fundability, then we would have a fund to support them. And we built that model in 5 years from bottom up to going public, raising $15 million, doing a partnership with China.com for $10 million, and we were really the sort of center of youth entrepreneurship. It was an amazing, amazing time. And so one of the reasons I love Ryerson so much and what's happening with the DMZ is because I've lived that model before. It's incredible when you give young people a chance to sort of dig in and come up with their own ideas, and you support them as much as you can by connecting them to corporate partners, et cetera. You just know that it's going to fly. So I'm super psyched about what's happening here. After I did Kids Energy, and we went public, my husband and I, who's here tonight, we took a trip around the world and went and met all of our favorite social entrepreneurs. And I got inspired again to kind of go deeper on some of the things that I was struggling with. And what I kept hearing over and over from the young people that I was working with was, now that they started to understand the size of the challenges that were out there in the world, they really felt like their individual bit didn't matter. Like, what's my impact really? Like, if I don't change my behavior, it doesn't matter because the problem is so huge. There's just no way we can change it. And so I went on a journey to see if I could figure out how to create software that would allow people to track their impact and aggregate it together so that you could see that your little impact plus your friend's impact plus your communities of friends' impact create a really big impact. And could we do a visualization engine for that? And lots of pain trying to figure that out. Worked with over 400 nonprofits because I thought that was my audience. And then one day I was at the Clinton Global Initiative and met the Vice President of Sustainability at Walmart. And he was on stage talking about every one of their 1.4 million employees had a personal sustainability plan. And I went, oh my God, that is the perfect client for us. So I went up to him after and I said, I have software that will allow you to track the impact of all of that activity. And he went, oh my God. And it took 9 months to close, but Walmart was our first client. And that was a completely crazy roller coaster ride. They wanted to launch all 1.4 million people on the same day. Our servers crashed 15 minutes later. It was a total nightmare. I still have the whole ICQ trail of like all of my coders freaking out. Oh my God, there's like 1,400 people every millisecond or something. Oh, it was painful. But working with Walmart was interesting, right? Because I had come from this place where I was really about social change and making a difference, and Walmart was like the enemy. Like, this is just such a weird thing. And yet they were really out in front from a sustainability perspective, and their scale allows them to have massive, massive change. So we worked with Walmart and Coke and Johnson & Johnson and a bunch of other companies with our software. And I was, at that time, I did this startup in Silicon Valley. And I think, one of the things that I've noticed is environment is really, really critical to being successful as an entrepreneur. So in Prague, it kind of felt like everything would work in a way because everything was possible, or it felt like that. There was just yeses all over the place. So when I came back to Canada, I thought, this will be no problem, and it was brutal. It was mid-90s, recession time. Everyone said no, and as I said, it took me like that 1,000 phone calls to get 10. And then I always had this, niggling feeling. I love Canada so much, but I was like, oh, I'm sure Silicon Valley is totally going to kick butt and be so much easier. And it really was. And we need to figure out how to be like that. But when I was down there, I would say, here's my idea, and people would say, can you do it twice as fast? Could you use twice as much money? Would it get you there faster? Whereas here, I always heard, could you start with a pilot? That's kind of a big idea. Maybe you should just start a little smaller, right? And this still happens today. We're struggling with that. And what I'm very interested in now is helping to shift that culture. So I could go create another startup. In fact, I have another startup idea. But I'm super, super passionate about how you shift the culture in this country from our risk averseness to really starting to support startups. How can we get behind our startups? Because I actually think that's going to drive a lot of innovation in this country. And so I'm committed to setting up a social innovation zone here at Ryerson, bringing global networks of corporations in. If you're a student with an idea and you want to connect, please see me after. I want to gather all this together. It helps me with sales out in the community to get companies and to get the funding to set this up. And I'd love to see this social innovation zone really start to drive a lot of systemic change in the country. Thanks.